All right, everybody, welcome to Sherdog.com. This is Off the Chain, the weekly panel discussion show. I'm your host, Ant Walker, joined by a magnificent panel once again. And of course, that panel is partly manned by the senior editor, the jack of all trades, who's mastered them all at Sherdog.com. He's Ben Duffy. Ben, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I am fresh back from an extremely outlandish card in San Antonio this past weekend that I'm sure we'll be talking about, and I have some boots on the ground accounts of what went on there. Can't wait to start.
Should be some fun stuff there. And also, of course, our resident stat expert, the man with all the numbers, with all the facts that you didn't know, but you need to know, Jay Pettry. Jay, what's going on?
Hey, fellas, how we doing? I feel like we're going to have more to say about San Antonio now than we would have the other night. So that's kind of good. I'm looking forward to seeing how much fun we're going to have tonight.
All right. And our fourth chair is anchored by Sherdog contributor, also the man at My MMA News, the man at several other outlets. This guy's a busy guy. He's a very busy man, has his own podcast, Coast to Coast Combat, if I'm not mistaken.
Coast to Coast Combat Hour, yes, sir.
Yes. So he is a man who is very busy, who took the time out to join us today. He is Ed Carbajal. Ed, how are you doing today, brother?
Good. Hot.
Yeah. I think that's a common sentiment. You're in the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. We got Jay. You're in Pennsylvania, and Ben's in Texas. Everybody's hot. It is an American epidemic right now. So
another scorcher. Yesterday, you should have called Cheers.
Oh yeah, man. So, all right. It's been a little while since we had to talk about this subject, but I guess like clockwork, it rolls back around. Looks like John Jones is in trouble again. Everyone. So this time he has been accused of some sort of battery for having presidential contact with a young lady who happens to work at a gentleman's establishment. And he has taken to social media to tell everybody not to believe what you're reading, and he's got witnesses that can corroborate his side of the story. I'll start with you, Ed. Should we start being worried about John Jones all over again?
Yes and no. I mean, I think we can just expect more of the same. He'll do a lot of stuff, and we'll see a lot of news about it, and nothing will come of it. So that's what I mean by yes and no. I mean, he'll probably still be able to fight when he wants to fight, and I just feel like he's gotten away with so much now. We should be worried, but in the sense that just worried about seeing him a lot more outside of fighting.
All right. So Jay, give us your take. I mean, this incident took place in April, I believe. And since then, he has defended his title against Thiago Santos a couple of weeks ago, and all else carried on without us even realizing. And apparently, he had a bench warrant out for his arrest. So Jay, tell us, what do you think, man? Is it time to start keeping tabs on John Jones all over again?
I mean, we should always be worried about John Jones. Respect to the man as a man, but he tends to get into things that he shouldn't. And whatever the reason, whatever it is, it continues to happen. I think a couple episodes ago on the trenches with you and Jason Burgos talked about the UFC letting their stars get away with everything, getting away with a lot more because they're the stars. As long as Jones keeps winning and keeps drawing eyeballs, I saw a preliminary report said something about give or take 300,000 buys for 239 not long ago, which is good for the ESPN Plus era. He's basically untouchable. I mean, if he started losing or people tuned out or whatever, it'd be completely different. But I mean, at the end of the day, the controversy kind of sells the fight. I mean, he can do not quite anything, but almost anything and be just fine. I mean, think of all the things that he's done. We're not going to actually go into them, but think of all the laundry list he's done. And every time the UFC gets up there and goes, oh, you, John Jones, and they do something and maybe they'll slap him on the wrist. But we kind of shrug our shoulders and go, well, what's next? So if he were anybody else besides, maybe McGregor, he would have been blackballed so long ago.
Yeah. All right, Ben. So I'll leave it with you. I'll just have you answer Jay's question. I know he asked it rhetorically, but what's next? What's going on next with John Jones? What do you think?
Well, I mean, what happens next is I'm not we personally, but law enforcement presumably does a little more fact-finding about this. There is always the chance that this is a specious charge that has no basis in fact. I am not going to rush to convict Jon Jones, but I will say that given his record of behavior over the last, 6 or 8 years, it's certainly plausible. It is within the realm of possibility. He has done worse things than what he's accused of doing here. Not that I'm minimizing a sexual assault, but he has done worse things than this. I have maybe even more of a cynical view on this than Ed and Jay do, given that just this weekend came away from what I think we're going to look back and see as a star-making moment for Greg Hardy. You can do worse than this and make money in the UFC if you make money for the UFC.
Excellent points there. I guess I'll just throw in my little 2 cents. I don't think we should be any more worried about Jon Jones than we already are. I think he's shown what he's capable of doing if left unchecked. And like Ben said, this could just be baseless. We really don't know a whole lot. And the last thing we should be doing is rushing to convict somebody before we really understand the facts. And by what the accounts that I've read, it seems like a peculiar situation to say the least. But at the same time, this is kind of the bed that Jon Jones has made for himself. So no shock that he is finding himself in hot water in one way, shape, or form. So let's move on to a card that you attended, Ben, along with the resident Sherdog business guy, Patrick Auger, who I sillily, is that a word? Foolishly.
It is now.
It is now, yes. That I sillily did not actually properly introduce last week. So shout out to Patrick Auger. You two covered UFC San Antonio on the ground. From your take, being there for all the pre-fight festivities, for the fight itself, was this, in fact, the worst UFC card that we've seen this year, Ben?
It is the worst UFC card that we've seen this year. It was unbelievably bad in the moment. Like, as one decision after another came down the pike. And, I couldn't have had a better seat. I was 6 feet from the ring apron, 9 feet from the cage, directly behind the blue corner. It just... By the end of the prelims, I'd felt like I'd been in that seat for a month. It was just surreal. I felt like I was like on drugs. I was like that little kid in the YouTube video that like is coming away from the dentist, and he's like, "Is this gonna be forever?" The one. It was unbelievably tedious, and it was the combined impact of all these decisions in a row. Because individually, most of them were not bad fights. Most of them were at least okay. But you don't realize until you have 9 decisions in a row how much you depend on quick finishes to break up that rhythm of a card. Or, if you want to remind yourself, just watch a grappling competition sometime. But yeah, it was unbelievably bad. It was a terrible card that almost in spite of itself got interesting for about 20 minutes.
All right, Ed. So where will you rank this as far as the worst cards of the year?
So I have it playing in the background, actually, just because.
Help you sleep or something?
Yeah, don't fall asleep, Ed.
Well, so I watched the prelims live, and then I went out and did stuff, and then I finished watching it on Sunday, and I like to look at fights and analyze them. So maybe I'm a glutton or whatever. I really I don't like to knock cards because I know what the fighters and guys go through to get to the fight night, and with the weight cutting and all, everything they do, they pretty much they give up a lot of their own lives to focus on this one thing that they want to do. So I really do hate bashing fights and cards out of respect for the fighters. However, if I was gonna call a card not good, this is definitely one of them. The last time I was this frustrated with a card was when I was at the Barclays Center for UFC 208 in Brooklyn, which I think that was only had one finish on the entire card. So yeah. So I'm just like, so again, it wasn't great. And yeah, I'm torturing myself by watching it again, but it helps I'm talking to you guys while I have it on in the background. But I always feel like I might miss something with technique and stuff. As I've been training half my life myself, so I do like watching fights just because of what what they're doing in there. So it's hard for me to bash something completely, but still, yeah. I mean, like I said, I always compare. If I'm gonna be negative, I always compare it to 208, and then I'm like, no, it's not that bad, I guess.
All right, Jay. So, tell me if I made a good decision here, because last weekend was my birthday, and I decided that I wasn't going to be, fully on duty like I normally am every weekend with my laptop open in front of the TV all day, taking notes and ready to do post-fight live streams and all that fun stuff. Did I make the right decision by sitting this one out?
Well, first of all, I do want to give a shout out to Patrick Auger. You can find him on Twitter at All Day Auger, and all the rest. He works for all kinds of different outlets, so he can take care of the rest. But as far as cards go to miss, our resident preview guy Tom Feely will sometimes write about, if there's a card to miss, you wouldn't be brokenhearted if you skipped one. This would be the kind of thing you look at, or an MMA gradebook, and go, okay, maybe you can just move on. But we're having this discussion a lot more often than we used to, I feel. UFC Sacramento had those finishes, but until then it wasn't, it had a good knee knockout, but nothing really into it. UFC Ottawa was nothing special, but until Walt Harris. I think it was Walt Harris that got a knockout and kind of woke everybody up again. But the bench for low cards of the year personally has to be Bellator 220. And one of the reasons why is because I'm an American. I don't like draws. We had 3 draws at Bellator 220, including one draw where a champion kept his title in defense, which is just how it works, and then advanced in the tournament by drawing with his opponent, Rory McDonald, John Fitch. Post-liminaries that went on until 2-3 in the morning, a title fight where the champion, Alina McFarlane, was finally getting tested, and then she hit one lucky elbow, sliced her opponent's forehead open, and the fight was over. So it was just the bench of, oh, that's a shame. But, I mean, decisions, okay, you can have a bunch of decisions. And a bunch of them in a row, okay, some of them are good, some of them are not good. But you have a bunch of ones that are nothing special, they're fights. And then you have a couple scorecards that are bad. Like, legitimately, you look on MMAdecisions.com and look up the media scoring fight. We all scored it this way. The other fighter won. The only way to make a bad fight worse is a bad decision at the end of it. And I think we got all of that at this card.
All right, great times had by all this past Saturday. So
sorry, Duffy.
Let me just poke in a real quick thing. And after like Ed has shamed me, I will say none of this is meant to disrespect what the fighters put into this.
No, of course not.
But that Hernandez versus Massaranduba fight, it took a lot to get that crowd booing the only guy from San Antonio on the entire card.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't over the top until the decision came through. When the decision came through, it became worse than Ngannou versus Lewis. It's maybe the worst fight I've seen between actual high level fighters in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that one did not live up to the expectations. That was one of my sleeper picks last week. That I thought that was going to be just.
It was still a sleeper.
Oh man, the puns by Mr. Duffy. All right, so let's go on into what was the main event for that card, and that was Leon Edwards defeating former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos by decision. The question I have, Ed, for you is, will Leon Edwards finally get some damn respect?
Well, it looks like, I mean, I want to say yeah, but there seems to be a weird destiny tied between him and Masvidal. Like, he called out Masvidal at the end of the fight, and right now Masvidal is the guy because of that knee. So like, when you're looking at that division, will he get some respect? I would hope so, but especially what has he got, like 8 wins? He's on an 8-win streak now, so
right.
So it's that definitely commands respect, but with the marketing machine that's the UFC, you never know who they're truly gonna push and make matches up with next. And I mean, we've read all the tweets and stuff with Masvidal as far as like, it's either McGregor or a title shot, and I think that's a fight that sells a lot of money. That would definitely put Leon Edwards right where he should be with racking up 8 wins. that'd be a high-profile fight. But who knows? Matchmaking and rankings don't matter. Well, rankings don't matter at the UFC, in my opinion. So we'll see. I mean, did he get my respect? Sure, he beat. I mean, anybody that gets past Dos Anjos, I think, deserves some respect. But as far as like the current fan base, which I've seen, like I feel like lately I'm not tapped into. Maybe because I'm an old man. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, I think he deserves some. Sure.
All right. So, Ben, tell me if I'm crazy on this one. I think Leon Edwards deserves a lot of respect, not only for the impressiveness of that win streak in a very talent-rich division, but also for how he's doing it. He outstruck Donald Cerrone. He got on the ground with Gunnar Nelson and handled him. And he handled the high volume, high pace of Rafael Dos Anjos with relative ease. So is this the one that finally gets him over, Ben?
I'll tell you this much. It gets him over with me. I mean, the more we talk about this card, the more this discussion will become about the things that I got wrong going into it, if we're going to be completely honest. I did not expect the result that I got. And I knew I was wrong within the first 3 minutes of the fight. And I was ready to hide under the table by the 7-minute mark. I mean, I think I even said on this show last week, I'm still waiting for the guy that beats Rafael Dos Anjos without out wrestling him. I mean, Eddie Alvarez knocked him out, but that was a wild fight. You run that fight 10 times. How many times does it work out that way? The guys that have really beat him, like Usman and Covington, beat him by doing RDA things better than him. They were the bigger, stronger guy. They bullied him against the fence. He couldn't handle their pressure, and they broke him down physically, if not necessarily mentally. The things that he was doing to people at lightweight. I didn't think Edwards was going to have that. I knew Edwards was a good wrestler. In fact, he might be the best MMA wrestler from Britain right now, for what that's worth. But I didn't think he was going to be able to do it to Dos Anjos. And like I said, within the first 3 minutes, I knew that I was wrong. His reach and especially his hand speed, RDA could not handle. When they got their hands on each other, he was so much bigger, so much stronger. There was the time that RDA got a takedown, and Edwards basically just kind of turned over and stepped up out of half guard, just like a big brother type thing. And I knew kind of which way it was going from there on out. He has tons of respect for me. And right now, I mean, there's a ton of congestion at the top of 170, like who's next, who's out injured right now. And then there's also kind of a pack from about number 15 to number 5 that's really, really crowded. And it's really crowded with good people, a lot of people that are on long winning streaks where one loss can really send you to the back of the line in a way that can take you a year or two to come back from. He separated himself from the pack on Saturday in a big way. It is a signature win of his career so far, and I am here to admit that I have been wrong about Leon Edwards for 2 years now.
Oh, the heartfelt confession of Mr. Benjamin Duffy. That really touches my soul. Jay, give me your take on this, man. What's next for Leon Edwards? Does the Masvidal fight make sense for both parties? But where would you put Leon next?
Well, the way it's been working lately, UFC has really gotten away from the traditional Joe Sylvian matchmaking scheme: winners fight winners, losers fight losers, and more geared towards you call out somebody. If you have a name, think of John Anik, think of Bisping, think of everybody. The last question is always, who's next for you? It's not what's next for you. It's not what's the plan. No, it's who do you want to fight next? Who do you want to call out? He called out Masvidal. Masvidal and him have a history. I mean, Masvidal's 1-0 against him by TKO cut, so that's impressive. In case you're wondering what I'm talking about, they got into a backstage fight and Masvidal popped him in the face and cut him up really badly. Anyway, that's going to be the fight, because while he deserves respect, he's not going to get it. He's not, and it's really a shame because of who he's beaten on this streak. He's beaten not just, Dos Anjos and Gunny and Cerrone. He's also beaten Vicente Luque, Albert Tumanov when he was going to be
Brian Barberena as well on that. Yeah.
I like Peter Sabata for a hot minute. So he has beaten a really solid group of names. But, I mean, I would be surprised if he gets in the top 5. I really would. And that's kind of a shame because of how the division is stacked. But people always say lightweight's the biggest division, featherweight's the most stacked division. It's welterweight. It has to be welterweight. If you look on my Fight Facts piece from this previous event, I pointed out the win streaks of a bunch of the ranked fighters. Usman's the champion, 10 in a row. Colby Covington, 6 in a row. Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's number 8, is 7 in a row. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, 7 in a row. Vicente Luque, 5 in a row. All these guys have crazy win streaks and are barely sniffing a title shot. Colby Covington has to fight Robbie Lawler next, who's lost his last 2. It defies description. When Zaleski dos Santos, who I mentioned, is on a 7-fight win streak with flying knee and spinning knockouts, has to fight Li Jingliang in China. Li Jingliang is a great fighter, arguably the best Chinese fighter UFC seen, except for maybe Wei Li Zhang, but that's who he has to fight on the prelims or maybe early main card with 7 in a row. I just don't think they're going to give it to him. I think that best case scenario, he fights Masvidal. And one last note, 2 fighters on this card, 2 fighters on the card have the nickname Rocky, Leon Edwards and Raquel Pennington, and neither of them use Gonna Fly Now from the Rocky soundtrack.
Thank
what a
God.
missed opportunity.
No, what a wonderful way to not do it. Like I'm tired of Gonna Fly Now as walkout music. If you're gonna get a Rocky walkout song, let it be something a little bit off the beaten path. Robert Tapper or Napper or whatever his name is. No Easy Way Out. That's gotta be the move right there. James Brown, Living in America. 3-6 Mafia, Want to Fight. Like you gotta go something different. I don't want to hear Gonna Fly Now anymore.
Well,
walking on the cage unless you're JDS.
What about Eye of the Tiger? Is Eye of the Tiger safe?
No, Eye of the Tiger is about second on the list, about to get booted up out of there.
But I mean, you're right though about wanting to hear it. Gonna Fly Now is the most frequently used walkout song in UFC history. It's more people have used that than any other. Eye of the Tiger is like number 4. So
yeah, time to stop it. Time to let it go, everybody. Now, so as far as what's next for Leon Edwards, in my humble opinion, I think the Masvidal fight it sounds great. It would be a great fight. Problem is, that's a dumb fight for Masvidal to take.
Oh, yeah.
Masvidal should be getting a title shot from what he did. He should at least wait for Colby Covington and Robbie Lawler to play out before making any decisions as to who's next for him. So I was proposing this after UFC 235. I thought Leon Edwards would make a fine rebound fight for Tyron Woodley. I think that would make a lot of sense, perhaps even for Wonderboy Thompson as well. So yeah. I think either way, Leon Edwards is kind of pushed himself to where you have to have him fight a guy who's either on an almost equally impressive win streak like a Santiago Ponzinibbio, or a guy with a much bigger name like a Masvidal, like a Woodley, like a Wonderboy. So another aspect of UFC San Antonio, and this was what seemed to electrify the otherwise very sleepy crowd there in the arena, was Walt Harris, who had a stunning knockout of Alexei Oleinik. So Ed, I'll start with you. Is Walt
Perfect
Harris
timing?
Right.
I just saw it again.
Oh, sweet. All right. So while it's fresh in your memory,
yeah,
is Walt Harris a future contender at heavyweight?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say no after that. I mean, one thing as I was watching it again, he damn near, right before when they were saying their names, he damn near leapt out of the cage while he was getting ready and hyping himself up. So that is an explosive, athletic man that's probably going to do great things. And I'm probably, obviously when someone gets a finish like that, they always get hyped and people ride that hype for a little while. But I mean, I was super impressed just with the way he moved, the way he walked into that and finished Oleinik. I mean, he didn't even give Alexei a chance to do anything he's known for, which is what you're supposed to do when you're trying to win a fight. Make the guy fight your fight, not you don't want to fight their fight. So, yeah, man, I'm all for him.
Jay, what do you think? Walt Harris, future contender?
Well, in terms of heavyweight, he's a baby. He's 36 years old, so he's a child compared to the 42-year-olds, the 40, however old Verdum's going to be when he comes back from suspension. He's youthful, I suppose is the best word. I mean, you get what you expect from Walt Harris, meaning 13 wins, 13 knockouts, all in the first 2 rounds. The only time he went the distance was against Arlovsky, actually. But then he tested positive for SARMs, I think, and they had to overturn that. But I can't sign off on him as a contender yet because I don't know what I mean, we've seen him. He's fought, what, 10, 12 times in the UFC already? And I just look at him and I look at his game and I don't see the well-rounded nature that could have him beat some of the top guys in the division. If he went up against a Stipe, he'd whiff. Stipe might box him up. I don't know. Stipe might wrestle him. Who the heck knows? But I just don't see him having the chops to beat the top guys in the division. Can he get there? Maybe. But I think the only way to get there now, we saw him fight for Doom, who's the best guy he's fought far and away, and he got tapped in a minute because he took the fight in 24 hours notice and got armbarred. But I think if we're gonna try and hope that he's an ex-contender, put him against an old contender, put him against Lewis, Dos Santos. If you want to see if you can go 3 hard rounds and make it, go against Blagoy Ivanov, because Ivanov has a chin. But
I like that fight. Yeah.
Get it. I'm gonna say get a top 10 win, but Oleinik was number 9. But really, I love Alexei Oleinik. He's a wizard. He does amazing things. But get a top 10 win over a relevant name, and then we'll talk.
All right. So Ben, tell me, was this about Walt Harris ascending, or was this about Alexei Oleinik descending?
I actually was really impressed with Walt Harris in this fight. I mean, when there's a 12-second just like dead splattered Crow Cop leg on backwards knockout. I don't know if you saw that, Ed, in watching it, but you know, Oleinik hurt his leg when he went down. I mean, there's only so much you can take from it, but I was really impressed with Harris here. I mean, Jay kind of alluded to it, you know, and he was being a little lighthearted, saying, well, you know, he's only 36 in the heavyweight division, but Harris has this weird thing where even though he is 36 and this was his 14th or 15th fight in the UFC, he has the feel of an up-and-coming prospect. And it's because it's because he shows flashes of brilliance, but then is also capable of laying an egg at any given moment. So he feels like a 24-year-old fighter that's just kind of slowly putting things together, even though he's 36. And he has relatively little cage wear in spite of him being 36. He's always been a guy that can do something spectacular and beat a more proven or accomplished fighter on any given night. The question now is whether any given night happens more often going forward. I will say this. I mean, talking to him after the fight, he knew exactly what he did and why. Because the thing was, he completely destroyed Oleinik with that kind of step-in knee as Oleinik was going for an overhand right, and he just spit it right out. He's like, you know, we'd been watching the tape. We'd even watching right up to the open workouts this week. And I used to be his training partner. Oleinik drops his head when he throws an overhand right. We were going to throw a knee. We were going to throw a knee the first time he did it, and I did. I mean, yes. I mean, not everybody could have stepped in and thrown that knee with such force, but that was a result of like coaching, training, game planning, muscle memory from preparing for a specific situation. I mean, if he continues to get this kind of coaching where he is now, and he continues to work hard, he could be one of those dudes that has a kind of late career resurgence in his late 30s. Because on a physical level, he has lost nothing. I mean, he is a specimen, and he hits incredibly hard. So, yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic for Walt Harris's next couple fights.
Well, all right. So while we're on the subject of of heavyweight, it's impossible for us to not talk about the Prince of War himself. So buy or sell. Is Greg Hardy a legit UFC fighter? Ben, I'll start with you.
All right, if we're going to stay on the things Ben was wrong about parade, I had Juan Adams in this one big. In fact, if you're watching this right now, do not go back and listen to last week's episode, because I go on at length about what an easy time Juan Adams was going to have with Greg Hardy. I said things like, when you put an A-plus athlete who doesn't really know how to fight together with a B-plus athlete who does, the A-plus athlete is dead. I said things like that. I was wrong. Greg Hardy looked really, really good. I mean, and kind of similar to talking about the Harris fight, there's only so much you can draw from 45 seconds of footage, but the way he squashed that single leg and then just completely punished Adams was brutal. I mean, his problem has always been fight IQ on a level of just like, I am literally new at this and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I mean, what's his one career loss so far? It is a stupid fucking disqualification. It's a disqualification that wouldn't have happened if he had a few hundred hours more of gym time, like let alone cage time. He is a fantastic athlete. By all accounts, he's working incredibly hard in the gym. And he has a level of humility about this. In the post-fight scrum after the fights in San Antonio this past weekend, he flat out admitted those two punches that Juan Adams landed on me rang my bell. I was rocked, and I still need to learn to bring my hands back up. You don't get that out of many fighters. There are not many fighters, whether they have 2 or 22 or like Olenek 72 fights, who will admit that the other guy hurt them. And he's just kind of being frank about his strengths and weaknesses. After the weigh-ins, and I'm sure the UFC cameras were off by this point, he was like joking loudly about how he was the least skilled fighter on the card. It was pretty funny. I mean, if he's going to stick around in the UFC, and I am already on record as thinking that he should not be in the violence business as a vocation, but I mean that's a conversation for another day. If he's going to be here, he's a problem going forward. He is learning fast. He's improving by leaps and bounds from fight to fight, in spite of the fact that most of his fights are a pretty short amount of cage time. He's in the hands of the right bunch of instructors to bring him along as quickly as possible. He's a problem.
All right. So, Ed, do you agree? Greg Hardy, legit UFC fighter.
I mean, yes, I think in time he'll be a contender and a legit fighter. But when I say in time, I mean in a while, because I mean Juan Adams was 4-1 going into this, right? I think it was 4. What was it?
No.
5-1.
8-1.
8-1. So I mean, they're matching him with people of similar skill sets, and the thing about it, I mean, he's obviously coming from football, a natural athlete like that, and despite everything else, everyone's paying attention to the trouble he's gotten himself in. But when you remove all that and just look at somebody that's a natural top level athlete and is humbling himself to learn and admits that there's a way to go, I think in time we'll see him evolve and get better. I mean, the fact that he admits that himself is a sign that likely, I mean, if even if he tastes loss, I think he can still come back and drop dudes. Obviously, when he moves up, it's going to get harder for him to do. It's not going to be so easy. But like you said, he seems to be a good student, and I think that'll make for a good fighter in the future.
All right, Jay, your take. Greg Hardy, is he a legit UFC fighter?
Sell. He is a UFC fighter. By definition, he is a UFC fighter. He's 2-1. He's knocked out both of them in the first round and has the DQ loss. But then again, the definition of a UFC fighter, CM Punk is also a UFC fighter. Not comparing the two, but the strict definition of the word. I can continue to eat crow because my picks were abysmal for this card. I was running away with it, to hit him and take him down and whatever he needed to do. And I didn't see a way Greg Hardy could do it besides a wild exchange. But hindsight's 2020. Juan Adams is 5-1. Sorry, Ben. 5-1, 1-0 in the UFC. Who beat, and I'm quoting here, I'm not saying this word because I'm mean-spirited, he beat a big old Mexican with a big old head in Chris De La Rocha. He beat him up and out cardioed him and beat him in the third round, I think, and it was exhausting. That's his only win. He signed from the Contender Series before that. I don't want to draw parallels because there's a lot of differences, wrestling training, history, and everything, but another quick knockout artist that UFC has had at heavyweight, Shane Carwin. He had to get through Christian Wellish, and he had to get through Neil Wayne, who was undefeated at the time, before moving on to fighting names like Gonzaga and then Frank Mir. So if they're going to build him up, they don't have many other guys left until you start stepping into that top 15 Shark Tank. And it's weird to say that heavyweight is a Shark Tank, considering history and everything like that. But It is. I would have a hard time looking at the division and going, "Ooh, Hardy doesn't match up well yet." As Ed said, yet is the operative word. But there aren't other guys. You can throw him against Cyril Asker. I don't know if he fights in the UFC anymore. Juan
That didn't
Espino
stop
out there.
Smoley from getting a call.
No kidding. Like Juan Espino, the tough winner, has been out since he won it, and I think he had shoulder surgery or arm surgery or something. People are calling for arm matches. They may call for Jairzinho Rosenstruik, who just smoked Alan Crowder in 9 seconds. One of the fastest heavyweight knockouts, faster than Hardy, is another option. Maurice Green on the UFC, crochet boss. Okay, maybe. Then you got the Sergey Pavlovich and Spivak, who are both high, 13-1, 9-1 options. But then you start moving on. I think it was MMA Fighting. I think it was them. Had a piece yesterday, that said, don't worry if you hate Greg Hardy. It's only going to get nasty for him moving forward because of the guys he's going to have to face. I think that rings some truth, that he's okay. He's proved himself against these guys, but what are you going to do when you have to run up against, I kind of joke about it, but Tai Tuivasa would give him a real hard time, and he's a fringe top 15 guy. So there's not much more development he can get with how he's been doing it. But I think they're going to try, and they're going to try no matter what we say.
So, yeah, I think no matter whether you like him, no matter whether you hate him and feel he doesn't belong there, he's in the UFC, and yeah, it's official. At this point, he put on a performance worthy of a legitimate mixed martial artist, and you can love or hate his antics that got him booted from the NFL, but what he did in that cage Saturday night was nothing short of impressive. So I think Greg Hardy is going to be sticking around for a little bit. All right, gentlemen. So we're going to move on to the shock and awe segment, and this is where you tell me something about the weekend in fights that surprised you the most, whether it be UFC San Antonio, a regional card, maybe even Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman, anything related to those cards. I will start with myself. My shock and awe moment was Andrei Arlovski getting the win over Ben Rothwell. I mean, we said so many times years ago that Arlovski had no chin, that it was a wrap for him. And while I will not refer to the colorful language that Arlovski used in addressing such criticisms after the fight, I will say that I am stunned that he was able to endure such a bloody, messy, and highly violent fight like that with his chin standing strong against a guy who's been proven to put people's lights out. So very impressed by what Andrei Arlovski did in that. I'll start with you. What was your shock and awe moment for the weekend?
Can I have two? Is it all right if I mention two quickly?
No. Yeah, sure, of course.
Which, by the way, I got to chime in with everybody else about my picks being ass. All my picks were horrible. So, I lost money and everything. So, but anyway,
I just lost self-respect.
Shocking also, for me, because I don't like seeing it, and if anyone plays this back and watches it later, you'll see my face me making faces, and that's on Alexi's foot getting turned the other way.
Oh,
that was my shocking awe moment. I don't like seeing
hurts.
stuff like that. You mentioned when it happened to Crow Cop, and I literally do this every time it happens on when I'm watching the fight live. That's one, and then the second one is the first round knockdown when Pacquiao put Thurman down in the boxing match. I was kind of like, oh wait, like the old man still got it. So those are my two.
All right, Jay, your shock and awe moments.
Mine follows off of what Ed said about Pacquiao Thurman. It's not about the knockdown. They're not okay. Pacquiao can do what he still can do. It's how one judge scored the fight. Now, I'll preface this by saying I follow the sport of boxing, but I'm not an aficionado. I'm not a judge. But one judge scored the fight 114, 113 for Thurman. Now, I personally scored at 115, 112 in favor of Pacquiao. I had Manny getting the first 5 rounds. Thurman got the next 4. Then Pacquiao won 2 of the last 3 is like the last round. That judge gave Thurman the 12th round, and I don't know how. I don't know. And that's a shame. Now, I can think of draws in the sport. I can think the controversial stuff. You can always point to boxing and go, oh, there's been screw jobs. At least the right guy won in this instance. But I don't know if it's recency bias. Fury Wilder, Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, twice. You think of recent judging situations where it's like, what were you watching? You can think of it also historically. You can think of boxing that are, Marvin Hagler losing to Sugar Ray Leonard in a fight anyway, Pernell Whitaker, rest in peace, had the draw and the loss to De La Hoya, Roy Jones Jr., the Olympics. You have those moments. So I was afraid. I was so afraid this was going to become one of them. I was relieved, but I was still shocked to hear one judge gave it to Thurman.
All right. Ben, your shock and awe moment for the weekend.
I mean, y'all have basically, like, if I don't want to repeat myself, you pushed me down to like number 6 of the weekend by going last. But there was plenty of shock and awe. I'm still thinking back to the James Vick versus Dan Hooker fight. That was not how I expected that fight to turn out. I picked Vick in that fight. And the thing is, I know that Dan Hooker is a finisher. You look at the man's record, and he is a finisher. I mean, I think he's gone to the judges. He's won one decision in his career.
One decision.
Yeah. And other than that, it's mostly knockouts and a few kind of like mercy kill submissions. I didn't expect him to be able to do that to James Vick, and that's why I picked Vick in the fight. And he completely sniped him. And I have been puzzling ever since over whether that tells me more about Hooker or more about Vick. Because if you look at it one way, okay, Hooker is as good as I thought he was a year ago, and I put too much credence into him running into a buzzsaw in Edson Barboza. On the flip side of it, I'm looking at Vick and I'm going, okay, that's twice now in 3 fights that you've gotten one-shotted in a fight where you were either winning or at least holding your own very well. And if that's what it is, is that dehydration that's just making him too easy to concuss? Does he need to move up to 170? Because he is a gigantic dude. He is the most titanic lightweight I've ever seen in my life. And he weighed in on Friday with his shirt on just for like that low-key flex. Yeah. Like, I know you guys don't think I'm going to make weight. I'm going to make it with a half pound to spare. That was what he did. But yeah, I mean, in the moment, the knockout, I was flabbergasted. I may or may not have come out of my seat. And in hindsight, I'm still picking through it, just kind of like, they pick through like the scene of like a crime or a high-speed car wreck. Like, what can we learn from this? How can we get to the bottom of it? So that was my shock and awe moment. I did not expect Dan Hooker to flatline James Vick the way he did.
All right. So definitely a lot of surprises over the weekend. So let's move it along here. Bellator and Rizin, they announced that they could possibly be co-promoting a New Year's Eve event in Japan with Fedor Emelianenko and Rampage Jackson as a possible main event. Do you want to see more co-promotion like this, Ben? I must start with you because you're already enthused about this topic.
I'm enthused to talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
Like, take a picture of like Fedor and Rampage in like 2005 and put it through FaceApp. By all means, these are two guys of whom I have said, cash those checks while you can. Thank you for the years that you've given us. Both of these men were part of my formative experience coming up as an MMA fan. So more power to them. And yes, I'll probably tune in if they fight on New Year's Eve in Rizin, but that just sounds horrible. Like Fedor is here to cash checks, and yes, he is still winning fights because you don't forget how to knock people out. I mean, apparently you forget how to throw people on the ground, but you don't forget how to knock people out. And Rampage has not given a shit in a long time, but just go do it on New Year's Eve. But yeah, that just sounds awful. Aside from that, the more co-promotion Bellator and Rizin do, the better for me, with one exception. Outside of the title picture. For the same reason that I was fine with CM Punk fighting in the UFC, because I'm fine with sideshows as long as they are not interrupting the, kind of the actual ladder of contention. I'm fine with a lot of what Bellator and Rizin want to do, but it's already starting to make a mess in their bantamweight divisions. As we found out recently that Horiguchi is going to fight Rizin in a non-title fight, which means that there's a good possibility that both of those titles are going to go undefended until the end of the year.
All right. Also, the possibility that both those titles will be diminished by a possible loss. So I actually asked Scott Coker about that at last week's Bellator LA Media Day, and he actually didn't know that Horiguchi was in a non-title fight. He said that I was the first person to mention that fact to him. So gotta love the level of communication there about the bantamweight champion. So, all right. So Ed, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me your excitement level about the Last Emperor and and Rampage Jackson meeting for New Year's Eve card.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I got to give you a number. I mean, I've been watching MMA forever, so I'm not gonna. I can't say anything bad. Like I'm not gonna watch it, but I mean, if I have to measure it, maybe I'm like a hard 6.5. but I mean, it's yeah, it's two guys that yeah, I said hard too, right? But
I have a video. I have a video saved on my computer right now called a hard 6.5.
Yeah, don't share. Nobody wants a virus. But I mean, don't share the file. Anyway, Fedor versus Rampage. I mean, I'll watch it. Like Ben said. I mean, I've been watching MMA forever. I mean, there is something about watching these guys fight when they're around, especially if you come from a time when you were watching these things after the fact or pay-per-view or whatever back in the day, back when pay-per-views were like $30 or whatever they were to watch a Pride event, and now you get to see them fight here or there, and they're kind of mixing with an American promotion. It's kind of like it's something that's like you thought you were never going to see it. So yeah, maybe they're over the hill or whatever, but I'm gonna watch it. And as far as co-promotion, I'm all for co-promotion. I think it's long overdue, and I get super excited. And my co-host at the podcast I do, I mean, he probably got hardo just hearing Fedor's name, so because he's a hardcore Fedor fan. So I'm like, I'm just I'm with it. I don't mind it.
All right, Jay. Tell me, man, are you pumped about this Fedor versus Rampage New Year's Eve?
Yep, I am, because I want co-promotion. Almost always, yes. Duffy raised a really good point about co-promotion screwing up the title picture. Horiguchi Caldwell screwed up the title picture, and Rizin only has a handful of bantamweights because Horiguchi beat most of them in the tournament to get the title. Caldwell still calls himself the bantamweight champion. That's a whole nother story. But if old fighters, if old legends are going to stick around, if they're phoning it in, at least they're phoning it in together. At least Fedor, 42 years old, Rampage, 41 years old, full-on heavyweight, are going to fight, then okay. At least they're doing that. It's not Fedor fighting Yuri Prochazka. It's not Rampage fighting, I don't know, who matters at Bellator's heavyweight division. And my point is that at least it's out of the realm of messing anything up. But at the same time, I do want to see the champions fight. Right, there were also talks on that Fedor Rampage card, and if Rampage doesn't work out, it'll be Fedor versus Josh Barnett in the fight that we always wanted to see, but Affliction exploded, so he couldn't. They were talking about Bader versus Bader, the light heavyweight champion of Bellator, and Prochazka, the light heavyweight champion of Rizin, fight. Okay, that's a fight I want to see. Be for the Bella Rizin belt. Access TV had a thing where they had Resurrection Fighting Alliance and Legacy Fighting Championship meet for one event before they merged and became LFA. and the champion, it was the champions of RFA and LFC, fought for the Access TV championship. It meant nothing except for they got that super belt. Hooray, we're the Access TV champion. Oh, do that, and I'm down forever.
All right.
So you want a TV title? Is that what you're saying?
I was gonna say.
I want the Waffle House belt, the Waffle House championship belt. Give me that.
Okay.
Is this more prestigious than the money belt that Mayweather and McGregor were fighting for?
Give me the Double Dragon Trophy. 10 out of 10 times.
All right. So another interesting little note about possible co-promotion. I did ask Scott Coker in that same media scrum about KSW, and in my couple of chats that I had with Martin Lewandowski, the co-founder of KSW, he expressed to me that he had been trying to co-promote with Bellator for quite some time, and they had been in many talks to work something out. Well, one of those things that looks like is trying to be worked out now, rumors of Paul Daly being on loan from Bellator to fight in the upcoming KSW 50 in London against their welterweight champion Roberto Soldic.
Soldic?
Yeah, so interesting. I do like this synergy of these different promotions, especially considering that both of them are on DAZN, and that has some level of crossover. And if you're watching KSW on DAZN, you're probably watching Bellator, so might as well go ahead and consolidate that fan base. All right, so Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second here, because there is a Canadian promotion called TKO that is implementing a new weight cut system. And if you could please explain to myself, the other gentleman on the panel, and the good folks watching on Sherdog.com what's going on here.
I'd be happy to. All right, the Canadian promotion TKO is implementing a new weight cut system where they're adding 3 weight classes and abolishing the original welterweight of 170. And they're also adding a structured weight class system where they call them checkpoints. You have to weigh in 2 days before the fight at normal weigh-ins, and then on fight day. And the way it works is that if you were 9 pounds above your weight class 2 days before the fight, and you're over that, you get fined 15%. If you miss weight or the weigh-ins like any other normal weigh-in, you're fined 20%. If you on fight day, if you were 9 pounds or above your weight class on the fight day, you're at 15% fine, for a grand total of 50% of your total purse goes to your opponent if you miss this weight. Now, the other caveats is there's a little bit of wiggle room they still have for themselves. If a challenger misses weight on any of those 3 days, they lose their title shot. If a champion misses weight in any of those days, if they miss weight on normal weigh-in day, they're stripped of their title. But on the others, they can't, if they miss weight, say they're over like 10 pounds over on fight day, they cannot defend their belt, but the challenger can still win it from them if they beat them. It goes into effect in November, but champions have an extra grace period until next February. And yeah, this hurts the fighter this hurts all the fighters where it hurts, in the pocketbook. So what do you guys think about that?
I'm always going to be a little leery of something that takes money out of the fighters' pockets. That's always my first instinct, but I do know this for sure. The way weight cutting is in the mainstream of MMA is not a sustainable thing. It is not something that should carry on the way it is. We were just here last week talking about Aspen Ladd looking like death on the scale and her being the victim of a quick KO. We just got finished talking about James Vick looking like death on the scale, him being the victim of a quick KO. I'm kind of tired of this conversation. I'm tired of seeing guys and ladies step on that scale looking like Skeletor, looking like they're going to drop dead at any moment, and the next day they are to be locked into a cage with a trained killer. Just sounds like a really bad idea. So I'm open to a new weight cut system. I'm open to something more complex, and that's obviously what we have to aim for, something complex, because all that stuff you was just talking about, I got to sit down with that. I didn't understand what the hell you was talking about. I got to sit down and unpack that. But it's something. It's a complicated problem that involves a complicated solution, and this is better than what we have now. That being said, don't take money from the fighters unless you really have to. Ed, what's your take?
I'm with you on the financial side of it, but if I'm understanding this right, Jay. So they're doing 3 weigh-ins then, 3 times.
Yes.
So I feel like that's 3 chances for them to keep pushing themselves. Like, God forbid their health fail or something. You know, they have 2 more chances to come near death. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like the sound of that. I would prefer they stick with the. I mean, combat sports has always had just the the one weigh-in. I don't know. It's a problem that I feel like maybe if the fighters can have a vote, maybe that's a way to fix it. Who knows? But I mean, you also got to look at the individual athlete too, and how their body handle weight cuts, how how old they are. I mean, me as an old fat ass, I know it's hard to lose weight when you get older, because I'm trying now. So, yeah, man, I don't know if I like the 3 times a week thing, and then to give them that many chances to lose money. I don't know if this is the way to go. So I don't think I like it.
All right, Ben, what about you?
You know, I hear all the things that Ed is throwing out there, and I agree with kind of the principle and the dynamic he's explaining in every case, even if I fall on the opposite side of it, because I'm uncomfortable with taking money away from fighters in most cases, because they're already, as we've learned this within the last month, we learned that yes, in fact, they are disgustingly lower paid than the actual performers in any other major sport. We found out that fighter pay is about 20% of the UFC's budget, where in every stick and ball sport it's over 50. Hockey is considered stingy for it being around 55. So yeah, and anything that takes 30% out of your $8,000 purse makes me uncomfortable to advocate for. Having said that, it's almost the only stick they can use to get fighters to alter their behavior. There's not much else they can do. And the more times they weigh them in, you can't walk around, dehydrated indefinitely. The current fighter camp is all kind of starting from 8 or 10 or 12 weeks out, all the way down to getting you onto the scale at a certain weight and then rehydrating you as quickly as possible after that. Okay, so Jay's going to need to close the loading dock door.
What are you going to do? Everybody's working for the weekend.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you weigh them enough times, almost the same way fighters get tested for drugs out of competition, the more they're going to be encouraged to just kind of maintain a healthy weight or not try to pretend that they can compete at a weight that's not realistically close to their walking weight. And I think that's the eventual goal we need to go for. And if weighing them more often is kind of the painful intermediate step there, then maybe that's what we have to do. But if these fighters were being weighed multiple times in the week or two leading up to camp, and then were weighed, held, do surprise weigh-ins, like they do surprise drug tests. You're a welterweight. Step on the scale now. You have a fight in 3 months. Okay, you weigh 220 pounds? That's a problem.
Okay, Johnny Hendricks.
Notably, Johnny Hendricks had trouble making 170 once he was in camp. I think periodic weight checks may be the thing we're going towards if we're going to try to get rid of crash dehydration as a method of making weight.
One thing that I did particularly like about what you said, Ben, if USADA is got their whereabouts on all these athletes in the UFC, of course, and they're tracking you, you're hiking on the side of a mountain in Tibet, and USADA shows up expecting a piss sample. Go ahead and do a hydration test too while you're there.
If Johnny Hendricks goes to Indochina,
I want to test her in a bowl of rice.
Ready to pop a cup.
So I do think there are ways to solve this problem with some of the resources that are already in place. All right, fellas. So we're going to move on to the lightning round, and allow me to make sure the stopwatch is ready, because I'm anxious to cut a motherfucker off. It is my favorite part of this show. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a beautiful thing. So I will start with you, my man, Jay. I'm going to ask you about one championship. They are putting Eddie Alvarez back into the lightweight Grand Prix, and I want to know how you feel about that. My man, you've got 30 seconds.
It was only a matter of time until they did this. They're slotting him in against a guy that wasn't in the tournament to begin with. He was the former lightweight champion, Edward Foliang, who just got put to sleep to lose his belt. So they're both replacing injured guys. At this rate, Mighty Mouse, if he loses, he'll get into the flyweight or bantamweight tournament too. I guess the only solace is that neither of them represent Evolve MMA, but I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
All right, with that time to spare, beautiful work by you, Jay. Ben, the habitual clock offender. You've got 30 seconds. Tell me, how do you feel about one championship and Eddie Alvarez back in the lightweight Grand Prix?
You know what? I find it kind of frustrating and disappointing. I'm not surprised either. They were going to find some way to get him back in if they could justify it at all. And I'm not mad at it, because I want to see Eddie Alvarez fight again. He's on the tail side of his career. I want to see him fight as many more times as he can and cash many checks as he can, to provide for his 19 kids as best he can before he hangs them up for good. What I am bothered by is them even going through the pretense.
Oh, my goodness. We have run out of time, Mr. Duffy. Goodness gracious, man. Have you no respect for the clock? Ed, what say you? You have 30 seconds to tell me your personal feelings about one championship, Eddie Alvarez, and that lightweight Grand Prix.
I'm wondering if it's some favoritism or how they want to push him or just to get more eyeballs on the product. But the one thing about tournaments is that the truth always comes out in the end. So whether he's reinserted for whatever reason, win or lose, we'll see what he's got left. Especially tournaments are a good way to find out what's left in anybody.
Oh my goodness, with time to spare. Nice. Great job, Ed. So I'm gonna restart the clock for myself and give
Let's get a 30-second ant rant.
Can I have another 28 seconds?
I'm going to start my clock over because you cannot invade my time too, Mr. Duffy. So my personal feelings about this one championship is doing what I thought they would do in getting Eddie Alvarez back into the lightweight Grand Prix. He is a very expensive fighter for them. Now, I am not at liberty to discuss the financials that I have heard, and I've not been able to verify them independently. But yes, he is a very, very expensive fighter, and there is no way that they're going to invest that amount of money in him and let him fall by the wayside by a singular knockout in that event. So, boom, done. Boom. 29 seconds. I'm incredible. Now, we're going to start with Mr. Duffy to see if he can redeem himself for his habitual abuse of the clock. Chris Cyborg is fighting Felicia Spencer this weekend at UFC 240. Do you think if she beats Spencer that she will stick around in the UFC? Ben, you have 30 seconds.
I know the clock is running. I'd say about 2-1 odds she stays in the UFC. Bellator would love to have her back. There's interesting fights for her. She has history with Scott Coker. There's every reason she would go. And even with all that, the chances are still 2-1 she stays in the UFC. But I'd love to see her in Bellator.
I was so hoping you'd go over the clock because your disrespect for the beginning of that time. But you made it with time to spare. Jay, it is your turn. Tell me, does Chris Cyborg stay with the UFC if she beats Felicia Spencer this weekend?
No, she has her one foot out the door already. UFC will not offer her a one-fight deal to fight Amanda Nunes, maybe two if she wins. They'll make her stay for a long time, and then what? She'll look around, see there's nobody left, and she'll move on. I'd say look for her to sign with Bellator before the end of the year. And if Bud doesn't fight Gabby Garcia, she's fighting Cyborg before the end of the year.
Oh,
I disagree with Mr. Pettry. I can't wait to see how this turns out.
Oh, my goodness. Ben invading everyone's time. Rudeness.
I surrender my time to the gentleman from Texas.
Okay. All right. Ben, you have 6.5 seconds.
Next time you call a gentleman from Texas, there better be one in the room. I am not a gentleman.
Well, that was a horrible use of your time, Ben. And Ed, it is your turn. Please tell me, does Cyborg stay in the UFC if she defeats Felicia Spencer?
She's going to make it hard to keep her if it's even in her head, but I think she makes a bigger statement if she wins and then leaves in the industry as a whole. That's pretty much it. I'm done.
Oh my goodness, I love this guy, Ed. Ed knows what he's doing here with this clock. So I'll start the clock for myself. I believe that she will leave the UFC with a Felicia Spencer win. I think even with a loss, she leaves. Cyborg has flirted with everything outside of the UFC since she joined the UFC. And I don't think that's going to be any different, win or lose against Spencer. Julia Budd is one of the names that she has not fought yet. One of the big names that could get a win, could be a fun fight. Sponsorships in Bellator. The possibilities are endless. Rizin, also, boom, done under 30 seconds. I'm incredible. Yes, I am. All praise due to me. Now, one more for the lightning round, fellas. Donald Cerrone and Justin Gaethje was made official last week. Jay, please tell me, how did you react to this?
So I cover weekly news with the site a couple days a week, and on Wednesday at about midnight, I got word from an anonymous source that I can't cite, tipping me off that Cowboy would fight Gaethje. So I started putting this together, and then the piece dropped. So by about 2 a.m., I published the piece. Couldn't sleep because of how exciting it was. I mean, Cowboy has the most post-fight bonuses. Gaethje started with 5 in all of his 5 fights. Bring it on.
Oh my goodness, just the clock management, just beautiful from Mr. Pettry. Your turn, Ed. How did you react to the Cowboy and Gaethje news?
The same way Ice-T reacted when he wanted to kill Nino Brown at the end of New Jack City. I was just excited, so excited. Once again, I got hard. That's a fight I want to see all day, every day, more than a few times.
To keep the New Jack City theme going, all I'll say is shut your $5 ass up before I make change. Ben, you have 30 seconds. Please tell me, how did you react with Cerrone and Gaethje made official?
Obviously, I was excited for an announcement of a fight between two of the UFC's greatest action fighters. Worried for Cerrone, but he has never been one to shy away from a challenge. This is a man that has never shied away from a fight in his career. And I've underestimated him a few times in the last couple of years, certainly against Perry. So I just can't wait to see it.
Oh, I was so hoping you'd say 2 more words so I could cut you off, but you just made it.
Okay. What you need to do is order one of those master classes from like the poker players, because I'm watching your eyes looking up and down at the clock.
I'm gonna sit the clock like near my camera so you can't tell.
Get yourself an on-screen display.
The shot clock up top. Get that shot clock going.
Yeah, get the shot clock.
Yeah, gotta do that. Gotta up the production value here and Off the Chain. But I'm a one-man studio. Woe was me. All right, so my reaction to Cerrone versus Gaethje. Yes. Hell yes. Thank you. May I have another? Yes, that was my reaction. Okay. So UFC 240 is taking place this weekend. Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar for the featherweight title. I would love your thoughts on the main event, the card as a whole, and what are your sleeper picks? I'm going to start with you, Ed.
So you guys know I'm in Jersey, right? So that's automatic. I'm going for Frankie Edgar.
You're going for Holloway then, right?
I mean, just it's hard not to. I mean, Frankie Edgar's a staple in MMA. For a lot of Jersey MMA fans. So, I mean, I know Holloway's got a reach advantage, height advantage, but it's hard for me to go against him. And I got money on Felicia Spencer because she's an underdog, and I think she could surprise us. But, I mean, you know, that my picks have been garbage anyway lately. But that's as far as I've looked at the card.
All right, Jay. Tell me, man, what are your sleeper picks for this event?
Well, I gotta say, and I think I mentioned this to somebody earlier, this, with all respect to everybody on this card, this is a Canadian Fight Night card with a title placed on top. If you had Cyborg versus Spencer, you could throw it on ESPN Plus, and we call it a day. But then they plop the title fight, and now we have to pony up to buy it. Now it's Frankie versus Max. Sign me up. I would respectfully disagree. From my New Jersey compatriot that Edgar all day. I don't know if he's going to have what it takes to beat Holloway. But getting into sleeper picks, I got to go with the flyweight fight. I got to go with Davison Figueiredo, Alexander Pantoja. That is my serious fight of the night pick. That could be action. That could be crazy. I don't know what's going to happen. If Pantoja can try and get a submission, will Figueiredo rebound the right way off a loss, his first loss? I don't know. If Pantoja wins, he's got to be right there in line for a title shot after Joe Benavidez. And either way, this really has strange implications on the division, because if Figueiredo wins, he lost to Formiga, but so if that's the case, he'll have to fight down in the rankings to get any other opponent. So, and there aren't many that are that interesting. The division now has 15 ranked fighters again. It's back to a fully staffed rankings list. So maybe flyweight's coming back. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Ben, please tell me, what's something on this card that you're checking for that you don't think the rest of the world is quite tuned into?
Okay, I'll give a short answer and a long answer, since we've already established I'm not good at holding myself to short answers. On the short answer front, I like Jeff Neal versus Nico Price. I already talked a little earlier tonight about that log jam at 170 between the 15 and 5 spots. Those guys are right in that. You know, Vicente Luque is in there with them. Obviously, Leon Edwards just made his way out of that kind of big scrum of really good dudes. But the winner of Neal versus Price really makes a big step, and the loser of that one makes a really big step back. And again, in that lightweight division, a loss literally sets you back a year, because there's so many guys winning fights or coming in on long win streaks. Low-key fight I'm excited for, Hakeem Dawodu versus Yoshinori Horie. Dawodu is a dude, and again, this speaks to the depth of the featherweight division. When you're talking about, like, you know, heavyweight or women's flyweight, if there's someone promising, it's like, if they get a great win in their next fight, they're on the doorstep of a title shot. In the featherweight division, Hakeem Dawodu is a really exciting prospect, and I'm like, I hope he does well in his next 5 fights. you know what I mean? He's that good. He's had one stumble. He looked great in PFL. He's looked really good in his since he's been in the UFC. And he's taking on a guy that's 8-1 coming out of Pancrase. I've only seen that guy's last 2 fights, but either he's going to make a big splash in the UFC, which not a lot of untested Asian prospects do, or Dawodu will get a great scalp in his trophy case. So that's kind of my sleeper fight of the night.
All right, so I'll go ahead and give you guys the what I'm looking forward to. In a strange way, I'm looking forward to Gavin Tucker versus Sungwoo Cho. And that's mainly because I want to see what Gavin Tucker looks like. Last time we saw Gavin Tucker, he was on the wrong end of a hellacious beating from Rick Glenn at UFC 215. I tried to beat on a table to get that as the beatdown of the year for 2017. And I think Frankie Edgar over Yair Rodriguez ended up winning the staff vote. But I was adamant about Gavin Tucker and the damage he took against Rick Glenn. I think it ended up being part of my ugly column for my post-fight analysis. Like I was steaming mad watching that, and I just want to see what Tucker looks like. He went into that fight undefeated against Rick Glenn, his first loss, and it being so lopsided and such a terrible round of punishment. I just wonder what he has left. I just wonder if this is something that's going to affect him moving forward. And with the time off, I'm just really curious. This could go so many different directions. So that's something, a low-key thing that I will be checking for UFC 240. Fellas, so we are going to round things out here with the buried lead of the week. A story that you think should receive greater coverage, or you just think it's kind of weird and you just want somebody else to know about it. I'm going to start with you, Ben. What's your buried lead for the week?
Alan Amedovski, UFC fighter, one-time Bellator fighter, last week accepted a reduced suspension for testing positive for cannabis metabolites. The good news is that his suspension was reduced. The bad news is that there is a suspension at all. It is not a performance-enhancing drug. it is stupid that we're still testing and treating it as one. It's caused a couple of really stupid situations with fighters, like for example, when we were having like parallel hearings for Nick Diaz for weed and Anderson Silva for mystery clear substances in blue bottles that almost certainly were performance enhancing drugs. Just take cannabis and its metabolites off the list of controlled substances. It is utterly ridiculous, and it's micromanaging what fighters do out of competition. So that's going to get buried because Amadovsky is not a super high level fight, or it's not a super high profile fighter, even though he's actually kind of a sneaky high level fighter, and is about to jump into a very crowded picture in the UFC middleweight division. But yeah, that's my buried lead. He negotiated down a 6-month suspension to a 3-month suspension, and there should be a 0-month suspension.
All right. Jay, tell me your buried lead for the week.
Well, real quick, I would like to ask Mr. Duffy if he knows when Amadovsky tested positive for his prohibited substance. He tested positive on April 20th.
He did not do that on purpose.
So there it is.
It'd be so much better if he did it on purpose.
So yeah. So he tested positive above the threshold, so it was on purpose. Anyway,
I'm just saying the timing was not on purpose.
Oh, it was brilliant. I'm so happy. Mine, I had to deliberate. I don't want to take away from what somebody else might have, is going to be Michael Venom Page's next matchup. It's going to be in Bellator Dublin. Now, first of all, Bellator Dublin is one of those international Bellator cards where they don't know how to show the fight. They have literally half of the main card on the Bellator app. You can only watch it on your phone and then broadcast it somewhere. And then the rest of it will be aired tape delayed on Paramount and DAZN. I'm pointing on my television. Page, who's I believe 14-1, just lost to former champion Douglas Lima, is fighting SBG representative 3-1 Richard Keeley. The 3 men that Keeley defeated have a combined record of 6 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw. So this is the tune-up fight of all tune-up fights. Respect to Richard Keeley. He may be a legitimate prospect. He's knocked out all 3 of his opponents when he's won. But this seems like a horse of a different color. This doesn't. This feels like the kind of thing that if they were a commission, they would veto that. Like Valerie Laredo had an opponent who was making her pro debut
that
with an
like
amateur record
0-11,
like 0-12 or something like that. So they finally said, all right, bro, no. So I would love that to happen, but there it is.
So Coker gonna Coker. Ed, tell me, what's your buried lead for the week?
Actually, I feel like I think it was from that week anyway, that when I wrote about the ONE FC talking about coming to the U.S. and holding events here, I thought more people would have at least had an opinion on that, and it didn't seem like there was. I mean, they're talking about coming at the tail end of 2020, and I feel like, for as many times as I've heard, I wish ONE FC would come here, they finally said it, and nobody seemed to give a damn.
That's probably because nobody believes they actually can pull it off with the level of regulation that will be needed. So very interested to see what one championship can do if they were to come stateside.
I will believe it. I will believe it when their Amazon wish list includes a scale.
Well, while this is I probably should have followed Jay with this one, because once again, Coker gonna Coker. Antonio McKee is rumored to be competing at Bellator 228 alongside his son AJ McKee. Antonio McKee has been retired for quite some time now. He's 50 years old, and why are we doing this? Coker gonna Coker. That's pretty much all I can say. That is my buried lead for the week. So that is going to do it for this edition of Off the Chain. Definitely want to thank the fine panelists this week, and I'll start with you, Ed. Can you tell the good folks watching and listening where they can find you and your work.
Just on Twitter at Carbajal. Everything I do for Sherdog and all the places, and I write for it in my podcast. I usually put it up there on my feed.
All right. Jay, please tell the good folks where they can find you.
Well, today has been quite a day. You can find me on Twitter at Jay Pettry. You can find me on the Sherdog site in the features column. You go to the top in the main page and drop down, and we are on this list. And also, you can find me, I write Fight Facts pieces analyzing the statistics and unusual things that happen in UFC and other events. And as of this broadcast, I'm happy to announce, due to unusual circumstances, I will be the UFC play-by-play guy going forward. I'll be writing up all the play-by-plays for the events, and I'll also be writing all the betting odds pieces. So this is going to be a whole new world. I hope you guys look forward to it. There's a lot coming this way.
All right, very nice moves, Jay Pettry, moving up the ladder. Just this man, there's a little bit of dirt on your shoulder. You might want to knock that off, sir. Ben, please tell the good folks where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on Twitter at Benjamin Duffy. I tweet mostly about MMA. You can find me on Sherdog, of course. You know, my name is Ben Duffy. My own column is called Minute by Minute, where for most major events, I'll kind of write a minute-by-minute breakdown of what was happening. It's not straight analysis. It's mostly just kind of me making jokes and throwing in some Photoshop things that I thought would be funny to do. But the one that's going to drop tomorrow was written while I was watching UFC San Antonio from literally 6 feet away from the cage. It has a couple of photos that the UFC probably won't be happy that I'm posting, just because they are kind of behind the scenes ish. So, I mean, if that's something you're interested in, certainly check that out tomorrow. But yeah, I'm Ben Duffy, and you can find me at Sherdog. That's what I do.
All right. So I am Ant Walker. You can find me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. My work for Sherdog.com is found on the drop-down menu on the features page as well, right next to my good friends and colleagues, Ben Duffy and Jay Pettry. So also the Trenches, the live chat that I do with Jason Burgos, that goes live now on Wednesdays because we got tired of moving it around. PFL. So we're just sticking with Wednesday now. So, you know, to tune into the YouTube channel for that at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time every Wednesday. Also, I do write for MMA On Point. My latest video for them just dropped about I can't remember what the script I wrote was about. I just do a lot of writing. So go to MMA On Point on their YouTube channel, and it's over there.
It's about something.
Yeah, it's about something that I wrote. Also, my personal YouTube channel, The Walkout Network, I will be doing a post-fight show after UFC 240. So come on, tune in, stick around, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and we'll chat. So that's going to do it for Off the Chain. Now, you know exactly what you have to do out there if you're watching. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. You must make sure that your hydration test comes back and you maintain your weight class. And through it all, you must stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.